What do you do when your own brother-in-law walks into the family bakery and tries to take over? New locks, fake signatures, fake reviews, nighttime photos from under your windows. And that's just the beginning. I'm Harper, 32 years old, female. I didn't plan on ever posting this. Hell, a year ago, I didn't think my life could ever look like this. But here we are. My family bakery, Rose and Rye, has been in my blood since before I could spell my own damn name. My grandma opened it in 1976 with a hand-painted sign and one oven that blew a fuse if she looked at it wrong. My mom kept it alive through 2 recessions and a divorce. And me? I've been rolling dough since I was 14 when Grandma would kiss my forehead with flour-dusted hands and tell me, "This place is yours someday, little bird." So imagine how sick it feels to say those words past tense was in my blood, because one person almost ripped it out root and stem. That person was my brother-in-law, Sean, 34 years old, male, professional screw-up, married to my younger sister, Emma, who is sweet enough to cry at dog food commercials and too loyal for her own good. The first time I met Sean, he showed up late to Easter dinner wearing a fake Rolex and a shirt so tight it looked painted on. He called himself an entrepreneur, but his resume was basically one long obituary for failed schemes: crypto, MLM, drop shipping, wholesale flipping, motivational coaching, whatever the hell that means. I should have trusted my gut the first time he shook my hand. He squeezed too hard, held on too long, smiled too wide, like he was taking notes on me. But I wanted to be the supportive sister, the one who tries. That was my first mistake. When he asked if he could help out at the bakery last spring, I felt this weird mix of dread and guilt. I didn't need help, but Emma looked tired, and Mom said maybe structure would keep him from burning through their savings again. I agreed to let him do deliveries and stock work. Nothing major, nothing customer-facing. He lasted 6 days before declaring himself operations manager. I walked into the staff room one morning to find him handing out glossy business cards he'd designed on Vistaprint, my logo on the top, his name in bold letters like he'd built the place with his bare hands. He spoke to my employees like he was their boss, throwing around phrases like streamlining processes and optimizing brand potential. He tried to give Rosa, my head baker of 8 years, a performance improvement plan. Rosa looked at him like he'd grown a second head, but it didn't stop there. He inserted himself into vendor conversations. He ordered ingredients I didn't need. He told my baristas to modernize the vibe. He stood behind me during rush hours, whispering unsolicited advice like a mosquito in human form. And the worst part? He kept hinting to my mom that I was burning out, planting seeds like he was trying to loosen the soil for a takeover. I told myself I was overreacting. I told myself he was just clueless. Then one afternoon, Rosa came to me shaking, holding her phone. "Harper, you need to see this." "Hey guys, real quick before we keep going, don't forget to sub and drop a like if you're enjoying the story. And tell me what you think in the comments. Thank you very much. Enjoy watching." It was a screenshot of Sean texting a local investor, pitching my bakery, calling it his business, saying I was stepping back soon, and he was ready to scale. That was the moment my stomach dropped through the floor. That was the moment I realized this wasn't incompetence. This was invasion, and it was only the beginning. I didn't sleep the night I saw those texts. I lay awake staring at the ceiling of my apartment above the bakery, listening to the hum of the industrial fridge downstairs and trying not to cry. I kept replaying every moment I'd ever tried to give Sean the benefit of the doubt. Every time I said, "He means well," or "He's just excited," or the worst one, "Maybe this will help him." God, I could punch myself for ever thinking he was harmless. The next morning, before the sun was even up, I called him into my office. My office is tiny. One desk, one chair, one filing cabinet that sticks when you pull the top drawer, but it's mine. My grandmother's picture hangs right above the corkboard. She's smiling in it, holding a tray of pastries, looking like someone the world couldn't shake. I needed that energy because Sean walked in like he owned the place. He sat without being asked, legs spread, arms crossed, smirk locked in place, and said, "If this is about the investor meeting, I think you should calm down first. Calm down! Calm down!" I slid the printed screenshots across the desk like evidence in a courtroom. He barely glanced at them. "It's called networking, Harper." He leaned back like he was explaining taxes to a toddler. "You have to think bigger if this place is going to expand. You're too emotional to run the business at scale." My vision went red. "This is my bakery, my family's bakery. You don't get to speak for it. You don't get to meet with investors. You don't get to lie about ownership. He shrugged, an actual shrug, and said, maybe not yet. That did it. I felt something cold settle in my chest like a switch flipping. You're fired, I said. Effective now. You're not to come back here. You're not management. You never were. Get out. He laughed, then stood, leaned over my desk and whispered, You don't understand what's at stake, but you will. The moment he walked out, I locked the office door, sat on the floor, and shook so hard I dropped my phone twice before I managed to call my sister. Emma answered sounding sleepy and annoyed. When I told her what Sean had done, she burst into tears, but not the kind I expected. She sobbed, Harper, please, don't kick him out. He's trying so hard. You're just under stress. Mom thinks... Mom? I said. Mom thinks what? And that's when I learned Sean had already been working on her, telling her I was overwhelmed, that I couldn't keep up, that he was stepping in to help the family, not take over, painting himself as some savior to a business he'd known for 14 days. I hung up shaking. By noon, my mom showed up with a Tupperware of soup and a worried look, like I was the unstable one. Maybe Sean just overstepped. Maybe you're reading into things. He said he was trying to support you. Support me? By selling my business out from under me? I showed her the text. She went silent, sat down slowly, and whispered, Oh. And just when I thought that the day couldn't get worse, I found out he'd already approached 3 of my vendors behind my back. One of them, my flour supplier, actually forwarded me a message where Sean had introduced himself as the co-owner. Co-owner. I fired him that morning, and by dinner he was telling the whole damn city he was half-owner. But the moment that still makes my stomach twist happened 2 days later. The letter, white envelope, city watermark, addressed to me. A request to change the legal business name of Rose and Rye to Sean's Sweets and Cafe. Filed by Sean W. Halpern. Claiming ownership, 100%. I swear my knees buckled. I had to grab the counter to stay upright. For the first time in my life, I understood what true fear felt like. Not the sudden kind, the slow, creeping kind. The kind that whispers, You're not safe. You're being hunted. And Sean? Sean was just getting started. I must have stood there with that city letter in my hand for a full minute, hearing my heartbeat in my ears like someone was pounding on a door. The bakery smelled like warm sugar and rising dough, but all I could feel was cold. My grandmother's handwriting on the framed recipe behind me blurred because my eyes wouldn't stop stinging. Sean was trying to erase us. Not compete, not help, not even steal. He wanted to overwrite my family's entire legacy with his own ridiculous name. The first thing I did was take photos. 3 angles, perfect lighting, no shadows, my hands shaking so hard the third one came out crooked. Then I called Luis Hernandez, my business attorney, the same one who handled my LLC paperwork years ago. Luis picked up before the second ring. Come in, he said after I choked out what happened. Bring every document you have, now. I tore through my filing cabinet like I was digging for oxygen. Incorporation papers from 1987, my grandmother's original license, my mother's renewal forms, my tax filings, vendor agreements, everything. I filled an entire banker's box before racing downtown. Luis was already at his computer when I walked in. He took one look at the letter and cursed under his breath, something I've never heard him do in the 10 years I've known him. This isn't just a name change request, he said, scanning multiple windows at once. It's part of a larger filing. He submitted forged documents claiming you stole the business from him through fraud. Fraud? Me? I actually laughed. A sharp, ugly sound. Because what else do you do when someone flips reality upside down? Luis wasn't joking. He pulled up PDFs someone uploaded to the city database, mock contracts, fake amendments, forged signatures, and then he opened one file that made me physically nauseous. My mother's signature, except wrong slant, wrong curl of the R, wrong spacing. He forged it. Sean forged my mother's signature to make it look like she'd transferred interim operational authority of Rose and Rye to him. And Mom signed something for him last week thinking it was paperwork for grants. Oh my God. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. We're filing emergency injunctions today, Louis said. Then we take this to the DA. This isn't civil, this is criminal. I signed everything he put in front of me, my signature getting angrier, more jagged with each document. 3 hours later, my head pounding, I drove back to the bakery, And there she was, my mother, sitting at one of the tables with her hands folded like she was praying. Her walker stood beside her. She looked so small in that moment, I felt something break inside me. "Harper," she said softly, "we need to talk." I sat across from her, and she confessed, haltingly, voice trembling, that Sean had come to her with paperwork. Told her it would help me qualify for grants, and said it was routine modernization documentation, and she signed it. Not the forged city documents, thank God, but enough that he tried to fold her signature into his bigger scheme. Mom watched my face crumble. She whispered, "I didn't know. I swear, Harper, I didn't know." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a split second I hated Sean more than I knew a person could hate. He didn't just come after my business. He weaponized the people I loved most. That night I barely slept. I kept hearing Luis's voice in my head. "This is criminal. This is a pattern. This will get worse before it gets better." He was right. Because the next morning at 4:09 a.m., I walked up to my bakery door, and my key wouldn't turn. Not sticky, not jammed, replaced. Then I saw the paper taped to the glass. A printed sign in bold font, under new management, and across the street, sitting in his silver Honda, was Sean, watching me, smirking. That was the first moment I realized he wasn't just unstable. He was dangerous. I didn't even feel the cold air on my face when I saw Sean grinning at me from inside that silver Honda. It was like my brain disconnected from my body for a second. My bakery door, my door, wouldn't open. The lock was smooth, too new, too clean. Someone had swapped it within the last few hours. And that under new management sign? It looked like something he printed on his home office inkjet after drinking 3 energy drinks and writing a delusion spiral. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone when I dialed 911. The dispatcher asked for details. I heard myself saying the words. Illegal lock change, forged documents, restraining him from entering, active legal dispute, suspect on scene. But it felt like someone else's voice. My grandmother's mixer hummed inside the bakery, or maybe I imagined it. Maybe I just needed to hear something familiar. By the time the cops pulled up, 2 patrol cars, lights off, engines low, I'd taken at least 10 photos of Sean sitting there completely unbothered. He didn't even pretend to hide. He watched me photograph him and actually lifted his coffee cup like he was toasting me. A cop approached my door, tried his own key, then radioed in for a locksmith. The other officer crossed the street to Sean's Honda. I could see Sean gesturing wildly, acting out some grand performance, frantic hand motions, head shaking, pointing at me like I was a lunatic who'd stolen his storefront. But then the officer stepped back, arms folded, unimpressed. Sean's expression shifted. The drama ran out of him like air from a punctured tire. He got out of the car but didn't move towards us. He started walking away down the sidewalk, shoulders tight, fists balled. But before he turned the corner, he shot me a look that made my whole spine go cold. Like he was saying, "You think this is the end? Just wait." The officers told me straight. File for a restraining order, like today. The locksmith cracked open the door half an hour later. I expected chaos. I expected smashed glass, empty registers, damaged equipment. But what I saw was worse, because it was personal. Nothing stolen, nothing broken, just moved. Every drawer open, recipe cards shuffled, bowls in the wrong order, spices alphabetized instead of arranged by my grandmother's system, my apron thrown over a chair like someone had tried it on. It wasn't burglary. It was a message. I put my hands on the counter and just stood there breathing, trying not to throw up. Sean had been inside my sanctuary. He'd walked through the place blindfolded, as if he'd known every corner. He touched things with intent, not to steal, but to violate. He wanted me to feel unsafe. And it worked. The rest of that day was a blur. Luis filed emergency injunctions. He contacted the city. He submitted documents to halt the name change, challenged the forged filings, and notified the DA of the attempted identity theft. When I got home around midnight, my phone was full of missed calls from Emma. Then a long, rambling voicemail from her dad alternating between crying and insisting Sean just made a mistake, and begging me not to ruin his life. I couldn't listen to it twice. It broke something in me. That night I slept maybe an hour, heart pounding at every noise in the hallway outside my apartment. My neighbors probably thought I was losing my mind from how many times I'd checked the peephole. And the next morning, when I tried to open the bakery early to prep dough, I found a new problem waiting for me. A Yelp notification. New reviews. A dozen of them, all 1 star. Hair in the donuts. Food poisoning from their quiches. Owner screamed at my child. Rats in the back room. And the writing, the punctuation, the weird overuse of exclamation points. Sean. It was him. Again. And I swear. That was the moment something in me snapped hard enough to leave a crack. Not fear this time, not panic, something sharper, something colder, something that whispered, if he wants a war, fine, but he's going to regret ever learning my name. And that was exactly when I decided to hit back. Hard. This is where the emotional hook begins. The shift. The revenge arc. But I didn't know yet just how far he'd already gone, or how much worse it was about to get. The fake reviews didn't scare me. They enraged me. Something inside me clicked into a sharper gear like the grief had boiled off and left steel. I screenshotted every review, filed digital copies, timestamps, usernames, each one looking like it was written by someone who just discovered the caps lock key. I sent everything to Luis. Within minutes, he called me. His voice wasn't calm anymore. Harper, this isn't random. This is a coordinated attack. Document everything. And don't confront him directly. Not yet. Not yet. The words hung in my mind like a loaded trigger. That same afternoon, Detective Andrea Walsh from the Portland Police Bureau left a voicemail saying she wanted to meet. She specialized in financial crimes. Her message was professional but tight, like she already knew my name from somewhere. When I met her at the station, she spread a manila folder across the table. Inside were photos of 3 other small businesses, a deli in Salem, a flower shop in Eugene, a family-run auto repair place outside Tacoma. Each one destroyed by the same pattern. Someone working their way into the business, forging documents, sabotaging equipment, fake reviews, changing locks, manipulating a family member. Each owner had filed complaints. None had enough evidence to make it stick. But they all described Sean. I felt the cold ripple from my scalp to my toes. He's done this before, I asked, my voice barely coming out. Detective Walsh nodded. Several times, and he keeps escalating. That's why we're taking this seriously. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. My sister, Emma, she's still with him. Walsh exhaled through her teeth. That concerns me more than anything. When I got home from the meeting, I saw Emma sitting on the floor outside my apartment door, knees to her chest, mascara streaked down her cheeks. I almost didn't open the door. I didn't have any strength left to give. But when she looked up, her face was bruised. Bruised. My stomach dropped so fast I thought I'd collapse. "Harper," she whispered. "I need help." I unlocked the door and pulled her inside, my hands shaking. Emma flinched when I touched her arm, like she'd been doing that all week. She told me everything. How Sean snapped when she questioned why he lied about the bakery, how he accused her of betraying him, how he shoved her into the stair railing so hard she couldn't breathe for a minute, how he'd been pacing the apartment talking to himself, ranting about taking back what was his and making everyone sorry. And then she told me something that made my vision go blurry. She'd found his notebook. Not a planner, not a journal. A blue spiral-bound homicide of intentions, filled with pages of practice signatures, supply chain maps of my bakery, names of vendors circled with notes like replace, pressure, offer deal. Lists of passwords he thought he could guess. A page titled post-transfer strategy with profit, estimates like he already owned the place. I felt my throat close up. He planned this? For months, Emma whispered. Maybe longer. Then she handed me something, wrapped in a paper towel like she didn't want her fingers to touch it. A forged contract, with my signature. So close to perfect it made my skin crawl. I sat on the couch staring at it, the room spinning. The air felt thick and bloody. Emma sobbed quietly beside me, and I put my arm around her because she was shaking. This was my worst fear. Not losing the bakery, not Sean destroying my reputation. It was the realization that he could have actually gotten away with it. And that's when the cold part of my brain, the part I inherited from my grandma, the part that kept this bakery alive for 50 years, finally stepped forward. "No more reacting," I said. "He wants to manipulate the system? Fine. I'll use the system harder." Emma looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. "What are you going to do?" I stood, grabbed my coat, and pulled the evidence together into a neat, terrifying file. I'm going to make sure he never sets foot in our lives, or any family business, again. And that night in Louie's office, with Detective Walsh on speakerphone, I triggered the first domino of real revenge. We filed criminal charges: fraud, identity theft, forgery, harassment, stalking, attempted unlawful business takeover. And we handed over his notebook, the forged contract, the screenshots, the photos, the lock change incident, to everything. The moment Detective Walsh saw the forged signature, she didn't even hide her reaction. Oh, he's done. That's federal level. For the first time in months, I felt a breath of air that didn't burn. Not safety, not relief, just the cold, steady certainty. Sean wanted a war. Now he'd meet an army. By the time we filed the criminal charges, I thought we'd hit peak chaos. I thought Sean had already shown me the worst of what he was capable of. I was wrong. The next morning, I got a call from my bank at 7:12 a.m. The woman on the line sounded nervous, like she was reading from a script she didn't want to be reading. Ms. Hayes, we flagged suspicious activity on your business account. Multiple attempted withdrawals. Large ones, using checks that don't match your signature. My stomach dropped. How large? I asked, gripping the counter so hard my knuckles hurt. One for $14,800, one for $22,200, and one for $9,500. I felt the world tilt. He was trying to drain the bakery my grandmother built, empty it out completely. We've frozen the account temporarily, the woman added, until the investigation is complete. You won't be able to access funds for payroll or vendor payments until this is resolved. Her voice kept going, explaining procedures, next steps, security measures, but I didn't hear any of it. All I heard was the sickening truth. Sean wanted the bakery ruined, even if he couldn't own it. Destroying it was the consolation prize. By noon that day, 3 of my morning deliveries didn't arrive. My produce supplier said he'd received a schedule change confirmation. My dairy vendor said someone claiming to be the new owner rerouted the order. The linen service said our contract had been terminated. Sean was systematically cutting off every artery of my business. I spent 4 hours on the phone verifying every vendor account. Every single one needed reactivation. Every password needed changing. Every rep asked the same thing. How did he even get access? Because Sean had been planning for months. Because Emma had just told me he'd kept logs of supplier contacts. Because he didn't improvise. He escalated. By evening, I was running on fumes. No makeup, hair tied up with a rubber band I found on my desk. Shaking from caffeine and fear. The bakery smelled like cinnamon and lemon cleaner, my attempt to keep myself grounded, when my phone buzzed with a text notification. Unknown number, no message, just a photo. A zoomed-in shot of my apartment building, then my car in the bakery parking lot, then me through the bakery window, taken from across the street. Another text followed. Nice life you have. Shame if something happened. My knees nearly gave out. I went straight to the police station, shaking so violently the officer at the front desk had to steady the cup of water he gave me. Detective Walsh met with me immediately. She studied each photo, her jaw tight, her eyes sharp. Burner phone, she said, but the metadata might help us anyway. She plugged my phone into some forensic reader. I stood there, arms wrapped around myself, staring at the wall because I couldn't look at the photos again. After a long minute, she said quietly, "These were taken with the same model and software configuration as his phone. That gives us probable cause to subpoena records." I exhaled shakily. "But that's not the best part," she added. "What's the best part?" I asked, barely above a whisper. "The GPS data in the photos put him near traffic cameras. If the timestamps line up, we might catch his car on film." For the first time in weeks, hope flickered in my chest, but that flicker lasted all of 12 hours. Because the next morning, when I arrived at the bakery at 5 a.m., still dark outside, street empty, shop silent, I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and flipped the switch for the main oven. Nothing happened. No click, no ignition, no hum of the heating element. Dead. I called the repair tech immediately. He showed up 2 hours later, rolled underneath the unit, and slid back out 5 minutes later, shaking his head. "This wasn't wear and tear," he said. "Someone cut wires and removed components. They knew what they were doing. This was deliberate." A cold wave washed down my spine. Sabotage. Again. "I can fix it," he said gently, "but you're looking at thousands in parts and at least a week of reduced output." I stood there in my empty bakery at 7 a.m., flipping the close sign without even meaning to. Watching the first customers walk up, read the sign, look disappointed, and turn away. Sean didn't need to take ownership to ruin me. He could destroy the bakery one cut wire, one forged signature, one fake review at a time. That night, exhausted, I walked into my apartment and froze. My door was open, not broken, not forced, just ajar. Inside, the drawers were rifled through. My mail opened, my bills scattered on the counter, but nothing valuable was missing. It wasn't theft. It wasn't burglary. It was a warning, a performance. The full body shaking came back. I couldn't stop it. I called the police, filed a report, then slept on the couch with every light on, a baseball bat resting across my lap. I didn't know where Sean was. I didn't know what he wanted next. I didn't know how long this could go on. But the universe answered that question for me 3 days later. Detective Walsh called. Her voice was sharper than usual, clipped and urgent. "Harper, you need to sit down." I did. "We pulled the traffic footage." "And it's him," she said. "It's Sean. We also found evidence connecting him to similar cases in Washington and California." My breath caught. "And the FBI's white-collar crimes unit is requesting to speak with you." I closed my eyes. This wasn't just my nightmare anymore. It was a federal one. When Detective Walsh said, "The FBI wants to talk to you," I felt this strange mix of validation and terror, like my nightmare had suddenly gotten subtitles in a language I didn't want to understand. Luis insisted on coming with me. Emma stayed at my apartment with Mom, both of them too scared to be alone. At the FBI field office downtown, a woman named Agent Rivera met me in a conference room that smelled like printer ink and burnt coffee. She had this calm, unshakable energy, the kind of person who'd keep her voice level even if the world was on fire. She laid out case files from 3 states, all the same pattern, all matching Sean's methods. One of the victims, a florist named Helen from Eugene, had signed paperwork she didn't understand. Another, the deli in Salem, had been hit with fake health inspector complaints right after firing him. A body shop in Tacoma had been flooded with fake Google reviews and sabotaged equipment, every single one. Sean in the background, pretending to care, taking notes, getting access. Then Agent Rivera said the words that made my throat close. "He escalates when challenged. That's why this is urgent." Urgent. Like I hadn't been living that word for months. They took detailed statements, logged evidence, asked questions about his behavior, moments I remembered in flashes. The first smug smirk, the business cards, him reorganizing my kitchen, the bruises on Emma's arm, the forged signature, the photos taken through my bakery window. When we left the federal building, Louise put a hand on my shoulder. "This is good. This means you're not fighting him alone anymore." I wanted to believe that. But the next week was hell. Customers were slowly coming back, but I had anxiety attacks every time the door chimed. Emma, living with me now, jumped at every sound, walking around with her shoulders pulled up to her ears. Mom slept in my guest room because she was terrified Sean would show up at her house. We were all frayed at the edges. Then one morning around 5 a.m., when I was rolling dough in the kitchen, Mrs. Patterson, my oldest customer, came in early and leaned across the counter. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "I saw that man near your delivery trucks at the farmer's market yesterday." My entire body tensed. I stepped into the office and called my supplier immediately. Sure enough, Sean had tried to reroute our produce delivery again. I was still on the phone with him when my bank called a second time. Someone had attempted withdrawals again, bigger ones this time. They'd frozen my account again. My throat tightened until I could barely breathe. I wouldn't be able to pay my employees this week. I sat in my office with my head in my hands, feeling like I was underwater while the world burned above me. My chest hurt so badly I pressed my palm against it, trying to keep myself from falling apart. That's when Rosa, my head baker, my rock, came into the office. She must have heard the panic in my voice during the call. She said, "Harper, if you need me to work without pay, I will. We all will." I lifted my head, eyes stinging. Then another employee appeared in the doorway, then another, and another. One by one, they stepped inside, saying the same thing. "We'll stay." "We're not leaving you. We're with you." I cried harder than I had in months. Ugly crying, shoulders shaking, couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Sean didn't expect this. He didn't understand loyalty that wasn't bought or manipulated. He didn't understand what real roots looked like. And the universe must have agreed, because 2 days later, Luigi called with the first actual good news I'd heard in the weeks. The notary on Sean's documents? Their license was revoked 2 years ago for fraud. Everything he filed is dead on arrival now. I was still absorbing that when my phone buzzed with a new text from Emma, A photo of Sean, black eye, bruised ribs, split lip, followed by her message. He says you hired someone to attack him. He filed a police report. Before I could even process it, my phone rang. Detective Walsh, we need you at the station immediately. You're being accused of orchestrating an assault. I sat in my car outside the bakery, staring at my shaking hands on the steering wheel, feeling this dull, heavy disbelief settle into my bones. He was trying to frame me for violence now, but this time, I wasn't scared. I was furious. White-hot, clear-minded fury, because I had alibis. I had cameras. I had witnesses. I had the truth, and he had run out of places to hide. And that was when I knew. The next time Sean tried to twist the story, it would be the last time he ever got the chance. I sat in that police station interview room, staring at the metal table while Detective Walsh laid out the accusation like it was a grocery list. Sean had filed a complaint claiming I'd hired someone to beat him into silence. He said I'd sent thugs to attack him outside his apartment. He said I was unhinged, spiraling, violent. He underestimated how much I'd learned, because when Detective Walsh asked, "Do you have an alibi for last night around 10 p.m.?" I didn't have to think. I pulled out my phone, opened the bakery security app, and showed her the footage. 3 different camera angles of me inside the bakery with 2 employees, doing inventory from 8 p.m. until 11:47 p.m. Time-stamped. Clear. Undeniable. Walsh watched it twice. Eyebrows raised. "Harper, this is airtight." Then she leaned back, rubbing her temples. "He's unraveling. People escalate like this when they feel their control slipping." She wasn't wrong, and the next weeks proved it. The restraining order hearing came first. Mom testified about the forged paper Sean tricked her into signing. Emma testified about the notebook, the violence, the manipulation. Luis presented the notary records showing the signatures Sean used for his filings weren't even legally notarized. Sean showed up with a lawyer who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. He tried to argue I was mentally unstable and hospital on level overwhelmed. The judge shut it down. Permanent restraining order. 500 feet away from me, the bakery, and my mother. Sean stormed out of the courtroom, red-faced, voice cracking, shouting, "This isn't over!" Loud enough security stepped toward him, but it was almost over. He just didn't know it yet. 3 mornings later, I pulled into the bakery at dawn and saw the front windows sprayed with red paint. Thief dripping down like blood. My stomach dropped so hard I had to grip the steering wheel. I checked the cameras immediately, a hooded figure, face hidden, but the height, the walk, the shoulders. Sean. No question. Insurance told me, 1 more incident and your premiums will be unmanageable. Exactly what he wanted. I spent hours scraping paint off my grandmother's windows, my hands raw, my breath shaking. That night Emma's phone buzzed. A single text. From an unknown number. He made bail. He's gone. He'd emptied their secret joint savings account, $30,000 Emma didn't even know existed, and disappeared. The next week was a blur of terror. Me waking up at every noise. Emma sleeping on my couch with the lamp on. Mom refusing to stay alone. Louise texting updates every few hours. Walsh checking security footage. Sean had gone feral, unpredictable, dangerous. But the universe doesn't let patterns like his stretch forever. 2 weeks later, Walsh called at 5:47 a.m., Her voice was tight but triumphant. "We found him." I sat up in bed, heart pounding. He tried to cross into California using a fake identity. James Morrison from Seattle. He had $30,000 in cash and forged documents on him. Federal marshals arrested him at the checkpoint. I covered my face with my hands and sobbed. Pure, shaking relief. "He's being held without bail," she added. "Flight risk, dangerous, multiple state pattern. It's done, Harper. We got him." For the first time in months, the fear loosened its grip around my throat. I could breathe again without tasting dread. The trial was 8 months later. Long, grueling months of depositions, paperwork, statements, evidence review. Emma got therapy. Mom slowly healed from the guilt. The bakery came back to life. Customers returning, employees staying loyal, the community stepping up. When the trial finally started, I sat in the front row while Sean walked into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, wrists chained, ankles shackled. He didn't look at me. Not once. The prosecutor laid out everything. The forged contracts, the attempted business takeover, the fraudulent filings, the fake reviews, the sabotage, the stalking, the photos of my apartment, the destroyed equipment, the previous victims in Oregon, Washington, Arizona. Then Emma testified. She played audio recordings she'd taken while Sean thought she was asleep. Him bragging about manipulating my mom, calling family businesses the easiest marks, describing exactly how he planned to take over Rose and Rye. The courtroom was silent except for Sean's own voice admitting everything. By the time the verdict came guilty on all counts, he looked hollow, like his brain had finally run out of delusions to cling to. 2 weeks later, we sat through sentencing. The judge didn't mince words. 8 years in federal prison for wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, forgery, and witness intimidation. 8 years, and 5 years of probation after. He'd never touch another family bakery again. The day after sentencing, the bakery felt lighter, like the air had finally cleared. Emma hugged me in the kitchen while the ovens hummed. Mom wiped tears from her cheeks in the front room. I hung one of Grandma's old photos by the register, her smiling on opening day in 1976. People filed in, ordered croissants, bought bread, told us they were proud of us for surviving. And for the first time in almost a year, when I flipped the sign to open at 6 a.m., my hands didn't shake. The bakery was mine again, safe, protected, ours. 3 generations of women had fought to keep it alive, and thanks to the evidence, the courage, the community, and the truth, nobody would ever take it away from us again.